Okay, so the Las Vegas Raiders draft in the books. It was a fun draft. It was an interesting draft for them. I figured I'd make a video. I plan on doing this I might do it for every team, depending on how well it does. If these videos don't do too well, I probably won't. But I'm definitely talking about every team, at least in some detail, on my podcast. That'll be on Sunday, so check that out. But anyways, yeah, about the Raiders, I mean, this is an interesting one, right? The Raiders are sort of known for their reaching and for their, hey, we're just going to draft who we like, not worry too much about the value. And so let's just break down the players, break down the picks, and really talk about the draft as a whole. So first, of course, Alex Leatherwood in the first round. This was a surprise for sure. I think a lot of people were not expecting this. I was not expecting this at all. But at the same time, there is some logic to it, just because I think that he's gotten I think he's a bit underrated. I would say, like, to me, he was a second round. I had a second round grade on him. It's not awful. Like, for one thing, just a big guy, right? 6'6". He has long arms. He's just shy of 34 inch. It's tested at 33 and 7/8 inch. So usually, like, 34 is great. Just below that, but it's still fine. That's good arm length, and he's very athletic. He's the kind of guy who can go move. Really, the issue with Leatherwood that people keep talking about is he's not the strongest, and that's fair. You know, I might even make a whole film study on him just because it'd be interesting. You know, he isn't the strongest. That's a fair thing, but I think it's a bit overblown. There's a lot to like about Leatherwood. Really, the issue with this pick, and I think it's a fair issue, fair criticism, is more so just, should they have done this? Should they have drafted him now when they could have traded back? And the answer is, of course not. They should have traded back, maximize your value, because there was other talent there. But I think really Mike Mayock and John Gruden, they fall in love with guys. And that's kind of been the thing, which isn't an awful move, but they just haven't exactly hit some of the draft picks out of the park in the first round. And it does seem like, okay, they've reached on a couple picks that have felt like reaches. This might end up being another one. But I think they just like a guy who I think he'll be a good right tackle for him. Like, I don't hate Alex Leatherwood as a pick whatsoever. So it's, you know, again, he's not a first round talent to me, but that's just because there's so many other, actually, I'll change it. He is a first round talent. There's so many other guys. Like, I think Darisaw was better. I do, but I could be wrong. And as I said in my initial video, the reality is John Gruden, he does know offense. Say what you want about him, he knows offense. So I'm not going to crush this pick, although it is the pick that I don't love it. And a lot of people have been saying, well, if you flip their first round pick and their second round pick, the draft feels a lot better. I disagree. I think he will be their best player from this draft. I feel pretty strong about that. But unfortunately, part of that is because I'm just not a big Trayvon Moore fan. I really am not. I think that, I don't know. He's just one of those guys I just don't get. it. And so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing it. A lot of people like him. A lot of people have him as safety 1 on their board. So listen, I've been wrong before. I'm not going to be too arrogant to say, well, I don't like it, so therefore horrible pick. Like, other people like it, so fine. I just don't. He's one of the few guys that sometimes there's guys I see that I'm like, okay, I'm lower on him, but I get it. But then there's some guys where I just don't even get it. He's a guy I don't even get. I mean, he has a quick burst, so maybe that's it. He can kind of make these quick reads, but, not the 4.5 40. That's pretty good. So he's got speed, quick burst, but misses a lot of tackles, and he's just not really good in man coverage, especially even in zone coverage. He's just not the most agile, not the best footwork, I think. And really, what it comes down to is he's probably best as a strong safety, except he's not really the best at making tackles. So I just don't get it. I like some of the measurables of him. He is, and he's 6'2", 203 pounds. That's his height and weight. There's some things to like about him. I just think there's a lot to be concerned about with him. So that's why I'm not really seeing it. And maybe I'm wrong. But at the same time, kind of what the Raiders have seemingly done is just, try to get a lot of guys in that room. And again, a lot of people thought he was going into first. They get him into second. So there is some upside there. So I guess I don't want to kill it too much. But it's not a pick that I'm as high on as other people, and again, I know anything negative I say, the Raiders fans in the comments are not going to be happy. There's probably going to be some downvotes. I've already accepted that this video is going to get some downvotes just because I'm going to say some negative things about the Raiders, but so be it. I have to be honest. Let's move on to the third round selections now. So then in the third round, they selected a guy who, right now we're getting into the guys that I haven't done extensive film study research on. Maybe if there's someone who I find interesting, I might do some more research on, but this is kind of what I've learned secondhand, so just throwing that out there. But they got Malcolm Koontz, who's an edge guy, and again, from what I've read about him, he seems like the kind of guy who is a good athlete, and he has really good bend, but he doesn't have the best first step, and he's not exactly the strongest guy, so that's kind of the pros and cons of him. But again, third round pick, getting an edge guy. They don't really need one. People kept saying, oh, they need an edge. They really don't. But he's someone who could be depth behind. I'm imagining maybe Cleveland Furl. This could open up him playing on the inside more. You get an edge behind. So, again, I don't know that much about the player, but I like drafting the position edge here. Next up, we have a Divine Diablo type player who, again, I don't know a ton about. This isn't a guy who I've done a lot of research on. I'm interested in him largely because he has just a great name. So he's probably someone I could see myself doing a film study on and really getting into the things about him. But, he's a big safety. That's the first thing that jumps out at you is he's 6'3", 226 pounds. 262 pounds would be a lot. But, big safety. And, he's a guy who, as I understand it, can deliver a big hit. Maybe doesn't have the best speed, and from what I've read, it's kind of a sort of an average first step, average burst. But again, you're getting guys with value here, and Jonathan Abram, who has a tendency to put himself in danger with some hits that can get himself hurt. Well, now you got a guy who can kind of fill that role, and you're doing it with a third round pick. So again, I'll sign off on this position, even if I don't understand exactly how good the player is. They also drafted Tyler Galepsie here, another safety, who's another guy who's interesting. So he's 6 feet tall, 207 pounds. So again, going with 3 safeties here it's a bit surprising for sure. And I think that there's been some talk about maybe Diablo could transition to linebacker. I don't know, but if he's not, they're really trying to figure out something and maybe just hoping, hey, let's get some of these guys who have some talent and just sort of hope one of them works out, which is an interesting strategy. I guess the complaints about him are he had no interceptions during his career and is the kind of guy who maybe doesn't necessarily have the biggest center field range, but also he's a guy who apparently held his own against Kyle Pitts in man coverage, so that alone is interesting, and he's a good special teams guy as well, so maybe that's just why they're getting him. But again, really trying to get the safety position figured out. They had some issues in their secondary, to put it mildly, so there's logic to this pick, absolutely. Next up, they also drafted Nate Hobbs, who I actually find very interesting reading about him. So he's sort of a physical guy. He maybe isn't the most physical, but pretty physical. And, runs a sub 4.5 40-yard dash, which that's what you need. You need to be a sub 4.5 or you're really going to have trouble with only a couple of exceptions. So, he's someone who can go quickly. He does have I would say what's interesting about his 40-yard dash too is he doesn't necessarily have the most explosiveness. It's kind of like his 10 split and 20 split, a little bit slower. So maybe there's some concerns there with how explosive is he, but he has okay enough speed, and he's one of the things that's good about him is, again, the physicality. So he does feel like that John Gruden type guy. How good will he be? I don't know, but seems like solid depth here, if nothing else. And finally, in the 7th round, they go Jimmy Morsi here, who is a center, and he's kind of an undersized center, is from what I understand, 6'3", 300 pounds, not the biggest size there, and apparently he even plays a little smaller. But one of the things that I'm reading about him is that he's kind of just like this technician, where he always knows where to put his hands, where to put his pad level, things like that I do think Gruden values a lot, especially with a center, sort of someone who, has to be the leader of the offense. He's someone who maybe you could at least, again, feels like a depth position, but he's someone who, if he comes in, he'll know what to do to sort of maximize his own value. So that's probably why he gets drafted here. So interesting draft by the Raiders, I think. They did a lot that I wouldn't have done personally, but I don't think that it's, they're getting memed a bit too much, which, they drafted Alex Leatherwood, the meme lord, so maybe that's part of it. And I get it. I do think Alex Leatherwood is a reach. I think they could have maximized this draft value more than they did. That's just me personally. But they have some interesting picks. I do think they got better with the draft, which is the goal at the end of the day. They needed a tackle, but I would have liked to see them maybe get a couple better defensive players. But at the same time, I might just be wrong about Moorhig, and if I am, then this is probably a really good draft. So, yeah, as a whole, I'm not sure if I have to rate it. Like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. Probably a little bit lower. Maybe like I would say, I guess we'll do a slight dislike would be my overall draft grade for it. But not like something that I'm going to kill. Just not something that I'm going to go crazy about either. Because this is also what the Raiders do. They draft what they want to draft instead of what everyone else thinks they should draft. And, you know, it has worked out in the past sometimes. But it also has definitely had some mistakes. And if this doesn't work out, if Alex Leatherwood ends up just being okay, you know, not that great, if Darisaw outperforms him, which he probably will, they're going to face a lot of criticism. But at the same time, if the Raiders make the playoffs, they won't really care. So, yeah, that's what I think of their entire draft. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.